We're back with the Onyx Storm novel explanation, and this is part 2 of the video where I'll be covering the entire remaining story of the book. If you haven't seen part 1, don't worry, I've linked it in the description and pinned comment below. I've also added links to both the first and second books in this series for your convenience. With all that said, let's dive straight into the video. So at the end of part 1, we came to know that the king loses patience and orders his guards to kill everyone except for Viscount Traitorous. Now here, Xaden tosses Halden a sword to help defend against Courtland's guards, reminding him not to kill. Negotiations are still possible. In the midst of the clash, one guard shatters Violet's conduit, a dagger laced with her lightning magic, while another slashes her cheek. Xaden, consumed by a rage Violet has never witnessed before, vows to kill them all. He begins drawing power from the broken conduit's alloy, using shadows to strike back. Sensing the situation unraveling, Violet calls on Andarna and Tern. As a final resort, Andarna captures one of Courtland's panthers, Shira, in her jaws, forcing the king into a standoff. Violet negotiates their safety by offering the Emelian citrine and a piece of Andarna's dragon eggshell. Courtland accepts the deal, but with the condition that Halden can never return to his homeland. Violet sends Xaden back to Aricia for a week, hoping the time apart will let the red rings around his eyes fade. Before they part ways, Courtland reveals he knows they intend to search Unbril first, and teases the possibility of another trade that might interest Violet. 3 days after returning to Bazgath, Violet updates her friends during battle brief, recounting her tense meeting with Courtland, who had expressed interest in both her and Xaden's weapon-making skills. Though back in familiar surroundings, Violet remains deeply concerned about Xaden. After his recent outburst, she fears how many more slips he can afford before the red rings around his irises become permanent. During class, Professor Devera presents a map showing increased venom activity. Violet quickly pieces together that their enemies are repositioning in anticipation of the inevitable collapse of the Aritian wards. A week goes by, 8 days since Xaden's departure, and with Unbril on the horizon, Violet and her team bury themselves in research on the venom. When Xaden finally returns, his eyes have not returned to normal. The golden flecks have darkened into a permanent amber, a reminder that time is running out. More unsettling, Xaden seems to be reading her thoughts, suggesting his second signet is either strengthening or becoming more controlled. Cat raises a critical concern. Flying to each island one by one is too slow, especially with Deverelli as their base. With time against them, Violet proposes breaking the scenarium's rules by scouting all the islands in one go instead of returning after each visit. After the meeting, she pulls Bodhi aside to quietly collect a serum and antidote she had requested. But before they can dwell on plans, chaos erupts. A second year on the fighting mat suddenly screams, siphoning power from the ground, revealing herself as Venin. Without hesitation, Professor Carr executes her on the spot. Violet's squad spends 10 days preparing for their upcoming mission, during which she recruits 2 Griffin riders, Marin and Trager, to strengthen their team. Meanwhile, Arik reveals himself to Halden, who is shocked to discover that Arik has been hiding at Bazgath and has bonded with a dragon to become a rider. Concerned about Halden's unpredictability, Arik decides to take his place in the squad. Once the team is finalized, they fly to Deverelli and rest for 2 days before continuing their journey. Aware that some runes may still work off the continent, they plan to test them on the Isles. Their first destination is Unbril, Island of Dun, Goddess of War. While there, Violet notices a bracelet Mira is wearing. Something about it feels oddly familiar. When she asks about it, Mira shares that she visited their estranged grandmother Niara during her recent leave. Violet is stunned, having not seen Niara since she was 3 when their grandmother cut ties with their parents. Mira encourages Violet to reconnect with her someday. That night as they sleep, the group is jolted awake by a stranger sneaking into their camp. Before he can make a move, Xaden has a knife at his throat. Violet and her squad find themselves surrounded by 20 men on horseback who warn them to leave the island. Their request to meet the queen is denied, the soldiers deeming them unworthy. After all, they had been caught off guard. But the atmosphere shifts when the dragons and griffins emerge. The soldiers are visibly stunned. Dragons, it turns out, are unknown on this island. From this reaction, Violet realizes that Andarna's kind does not reside here. To gain an audience with the queen, Xaden negotiates a challenge. He'll fight their strongest warrior. The terms are strict. They can only bring half the squad. Violet chooses Xaden, Arik, Cat, and Dane to accompany her. The group travels to Aistol, the island's capital, and is led to the location of the fight. While they wait, Violet notices a nearby temple with 6 pillars, each etched with a distinct symbol: a sword, fire, water, shield, claw, and a book. On the temple steps stand blue-robed attendants, each with striking silver hair, identical to the silver streaks in Violet's own. Violet spots a young girl with hair just like hers, brown with silver-tipped ends, but there's no time to question the resemblance. Two figures arrive, a general and a high priestess. They ask if the squad is certain about fighting for an audience with the queen. Xaden affirms their decision, and three challengers are introduced: Costa, Marlis, and Palta. To everyone's surprise, Arik reveals he speaks fluent Unbris and offers to fight, but Xaden refuses, saying Arik is too valuable as a royal to risk. The squad chooses Costa for Xaden's match, but before the fight begins, the priestess changes the rules. Xaden will not fight alone. She assigns Dain to battle Palta. Then she turns to Violet and asks a loaded question: did she choose to be a rider? Violet answers that she chose her own life. The priestess cryptically replies that it's good Violet never completed her dedication, though Violet has no idea what that means. Before she can press for clarity, the priestess offers an alternative. Violet still has time to choose their path instead, and with that, she announces that Violet too must fight. Violet is pitted against Marlis, a formidable opponent who is larger, stronger, and clearly chosen to test her limits. Andana is outraged, recognizing that the entire challenge was orchestrated to force Violet, Xaden, and Dain into battle. All fighters must wield the same weapon, so Xaden chooses daggers, knowing they are Violet's specialty. With swift, tactical precision, Violet manages to pin Marlis, but her opponent refuses to yield. At the same time, Dain lies unconscious, having lost his fight, and Xaden is barely holding off his opponent's blade. Faced with an impossible decision, Violet chooses both. She keeps Marlis restrained while throwing a dagger into the shoulder of Xaden's opponent. Still, Marlis will not surrender. Suddenly, two bolts of lightning strike the ground nearby, finally startling her into submission. After the fight, Xaden asks if Violet summoned the lightning, but she insists she didn't. There is no access to magic on the Isle. In a stunning twist, it is revealed that Marlis is the queen. When Violet explains their mission to find the 7th dragon breed, Marlis says no dragons have been seen on the Isles for centuries. Violet requests an alliance, but the queen refuses. She does allow them to stay and rest. Curious, Violet asks what the cost of their help would be. Marlis answers simply, dragons. Marlis declares that she will only agree to fight alongside them if they deliver 12 dragon eggs, 2 from each breed. The squad refuses, unwilling to bargain with dragons. After a day of rest, they depart for the next isle, Hedotis, island of Hedion, the god of wisdom. To secure an audience with its leaders, the triumvirate, one member of the squad must prove their wisdom. Along the way, Violet picks up on a growing romantic tension between Cat and Trager. When they arrive, they are welcomed by Faris, a member of the triumvirate, who offers them lodging and introduces them to his wife Talia. To Violet's shock, Talia is revealed to be Xaden's mother. Violet and her squad accept Faris's invitation to stay at his home, but Xaden refuses to speak to his mother Talia. She invites them all to dinner. In private, Xaden tells Violet that he never knew his mother was from Hedotis, though it now explains the bedtime stories, Aran mint tea, and whispered tales of purple-eyed people who lived without war. Unsure whether to attend the dinner, he asks Violet what she thinks. She refuses to decide for him, gently reminding him that her own mother is gone and she would give anything for one more evening with her. Xaden confesses that he doesn't want to give Talia any of his time after she abandoned him on his 10th birthday. As they speak, two young boys run past the house, and Xaden realizes they're his half-brothers. Learning this pushes him to accept the dinner invitation, especially since the triumvirate will be attending. Meanwhile, Violet puts her own plan into motion. She quietly instructs Andarna to follow the boys when they leave to stay with their grandparents. Later in the kitchen, Violet hands Talia a vial, claiming it contains dried Aran mint. Believing it might comfort Xaden and remind him of home, Talia gratefully accepts it. At dinner, Violet and her squad meet the triumvirate, which consists of Nairi, Faris, and Roslyn. The dinner itself serves as their test to determine if they are worthy of an audience. During the conversation, the triumvirate questions why Xaden never formed an alliance with Cat. She explains that she agreed to the proposal, but Xaden refused. They suggest that he should be with her long enough to produce an heir and propose drafting a temporary marriage contract to be finalized with a legal ceremony the next day. Xaden agrees to have the contract drawn up, but gives them the spelling of Violet's full name instead. He tells them that Violet is the one thing he has chosen for himself and refuses to give her up for an alliance. When the triumvirate asks for their opinion on the city, Violet responds with criticism. She acknowledges notices that it is perfectly designed but cruel, as it was built over the ruins of a previous city, erasing its history to create something aesthetically pleasing and efficient. This, she argues, reflects their intolerance toward anything that does not meet these standards. The triumvirate dismisses this criticism, pointing out that they don't even know the real name of the continent. Arik surprises them by revealing that according to records, it was once called Amaryllis, based on Queen of Gods Amari, though Poromish records referred to it as Amelakis. For dessert, they are served chocolate cake. Faris mentions that Talia has been saving chocolate for weeks. Violet suddenly makes a connection. Talia gave Xaden chocolate cake on the day she abandoned him, making this more than just a coincidence. Talia must have known they were coming. When Faris requests more forks, Violet notices that the triumvirate and Talia are missing theirs and immediately senses that something is wrong. She stops her squad from eating, but it's too late. Garrick has already taken a bite. Moments later, he collapses onto the table and stops breathing. Xaden senses Garrick's heart is still faintly beating, but Faris won't reveal what was in the cake. Smugly, he taunts Violet, asking if she'll threaten to kill him. Instead, she flips the situation. She already poisoned them via the Aran mint tea served before dinner. Her squad had taken the antidote beforehand. She offers the cure in exchange for the antidote to save Garrick. While Mira, Drake, Kat, and Maren secure the house against outside threats, Dane rushes to Violet's room to retrieve her book on Hedotis. Meanwhile, Violet and Radok search for the cook. When Violet spots blue stains on his hands, she immediately recognizes the poison. Before she can react, the cook attacks Radok. Violet throws a dagger, pinning the man's hand to the doorframe, but when she turns back, she's horrified to find the cook's knife lodged in Radok's side. Violet screams for Radok, fearing he's fatally wounded, but the knife only caught his flight jacket and embedded in the counter. Dane returns with her father's book, and Violet finds the entry on Zakia berries, poisonous when fermented but treatable with fig or lime applied to the throat within an hour. She sends Dane to fetch figs from a silver tray on the veranda near her room. They crush the figs into water and get Garrick to swallow it. When he regains consciousness, Xaden nearly kills Faris in a rage. Radok tries to stop him, but Xaden is out of control. Violet steps between them, managing to calm Xaden down. Faris insists they'll never leave unharmed, but Violet reveals that Andarna is outside his parents' home. If he doesn't let them go, she will kill his two sons. Faris relents, and Violet offers them the antidote before leaving. The squad flies to the next isle, Zahilna, based on God of Luck, Zihnal. Unlike previous stops, the locals aren't afraid of dragons. Instead, they wave as if expecting them. As they land, they find thousands of seats filled with people, like the entire island had been waiting. They also realize magic is active on this isle. There is less magic on this isle, but dragons can once again communicate, and riders and flyers can speak to their dragons and griffins. Xaden makes Violet promise never to intervene like she did with him and Radok, fearing what he might do if he loses control. Violet refuses to stand by while a friend is threatened. They're greeted by Calixta, mistress of the day's festivities, who says the island has been expecting them and knows of their mission. When they ask to see the queen, she says they may, but only if they accept whatever gifts their god chooses to give. Mira warns the squad to smile and say thank you for every gift no matter what it is, as this is how favor is earned. Calixta presents a large stack of cards, each representing a different gift. The group draws, Mira gets wine, Maren receives tunics, Dane is slapped, Garrick gets a bucket, Arik a broken mirror, Xaden an empty glass box, Violet a broken compass, Radok cheek kisses from a man, Kat a ruby necklace, Drake a kitten, and Traeger a card with an arrow. As soon as he draws it, he's shot through the heart with a real arrow. Traeger's griffin collapses and dies next. Drake holds Kat back, who writhes in his arms as his hand over her mouth muffles her screams. Though Violet wants to break down, she steels herself, smiles at the man who killed Traeger, and thanks him. Arik meets with the queen afterward and successfully negotiates a deal. The Isle agrees to provide 40,000 troops to fight in the war against the Venin. Kat convinces them to pick an uninhabited minor isle a day's flight north in order to peacefully burn the bodies of Traga and his griffin. Violet decides that they will split up after they're burned and search the minor isles 3 times as fast. Then once Kat is ready, they will leave for Loisam, the next major isle, which is their last chance to find Andarna's kind. The group flies to a small island to burn the bodies of Traga and his griffin Scylla. Drake names his new kitten Broccoli. Violet is surprised to find more magic on this isle. They notice a cluster of small islands not shown on their maps. Violet decides to split into pairs to explore. Kat and Maren, Drake and Dane, Arik and Mira, Xaden and Garrick, and Violet with Radok. Before leaving, Violet checks on Xaden, concerned about the temptation of magic. He admits it tempts him but promises not to use it. Violet worries she could be his trigger. Xaden insists he only wields when she's in danger, precisely why she paired him with Garrick, not herself. Later, Violet rests beside a sleeping Andarna and spots unfamiliar dragon prints in the sand. She also smells sulfur, a sign of dragons. Realizing they've been camouflaged with a power like Andarna's, she suddenly finds herself surrounded by 6 Irid dragons. One of the Irid dragons speaks to Violet in her mind, and she quickly realizes that all of them can communicate with her this way, something she thought only happened between bonded dragons and their riders. The Irids refer to Andarna as the criterion and question what happened to her tail, as she has a scorpion tail while they all have feather tails. When Andarna explains that she chose it for herself, they demand to know how she settled on it. Violet learns that there are hundreds of Irids, none of whom bond with humans. They have Andarna recount everything from her hatching to the present. Once she finishes, Andarna asks if she passed their test. The Irids say they were not testing her but Violet, and Violet failed. They accuse Violet of taking advantage of Andarna, forcing her into the dreamless sleep too early and using her as a weapon. While Andarna is proud to be a weapon, the Irids are disappointed by it, as they are dragons of peace. They reveal that Andarna was left behind to see if humans would stop using magic as a weapon once the wards were in place. Since that has not happened, the Irids refuse to involve themselves, showing disappointment over humanity. One Irid warns that Andarna has given Violet a dangerous gift. Andarna informs them that to achieve peace on the continent, the Aretian wardstone must be fired with Irids. The Irids refuse to help, even if all humans are wiped out, believing that might be for the best. When Andarna asks about a cure for Venin, they tell her there isn't one. Each time a Venin wields, they destroy a part of their soul, and that loss is irreversible. Only one Irid Leothan shows any interest in helping, but the others reject Andarna. They declare that she is not worthy of staying on their isle or learning more about her kind. When Xaden and Garrick arrive, the Irids react immediately, doing something that turns the rims of Xaden's irises bright red. Realizing what he is, they are furious that Violet and her team are working with a Venin. One Irid calls Xaden an abomination before they leave. Ridoc, having seen Xaden's red eyes, now fully understands why Violet is so desperate to find a cure. The others return, and with their mission failed, the group decides to head home. In private, Ridoc demands Violet tell him everything she's been hiding. He struggles to accept her risking so much for Xaden, warning that all Venin eventually continue wielding and rise in power. Xaden will too. He asks what it would take for her to give up on him. Violet insists she never will. Ridoc urges her to draw a boundary. After hesitating, she says if Xaden ever hurts her, he's no longer himself. Ridoc insists she tell Rhiannon, Sawyer, and Jacinia the truth, arguing that more people need to know in order to protect her. If Xaden turns, the easiest way to kill him is to kill Violet. Since the Irid encounter, Xaden has kept his distance, blaming himself for their rejection, believing Violet might have convinced them if not for his presence. Not only that, Andarna is completely devastated, as she was desperate for her family and her family didn't want her. Back at Bazgath, the squad reunites with the riders left behind. Rhiannon is heartbroken over Traeger's death. Violet confesses that the mission failed. The Irids refuse to help. General Atos overhears and says punishment will come later. For now, he informs Kat that Sunniva has fallen to the Dark Wielders and Queen Mariah is dead. Her uncle, Viscount Traitorous, now rules Poromiel. Atos hands Violet a letter from Theophany, who mocks her for traveling so far for answers she could have provided. She hints they'll meet again soon. The squad endures 12 hours of interrogation but avoids punishment, as King Tauri is pleased by Arik's return. In battle brief, they learn that the Venin infiltrated Sunniva, bypassing its massive walls and starting a fire that killed nearly everyone. Only one of 4 riders sent survived, along with 2 dragons. 25,000 people died. Xaden arrives and asks what was stored in Sunniva's armory. They learn 6 crates of daggers were taken, suggesting an informant. The Venin used a storm to breach the city. Theophany must have been with them. Since she controls lightning like Violet, she could guide them safely through. Her power confirms she is a maven, a higher rank among Venins. Violet, Ridoc, Rhiannon, and Sawyer visit Jacinia, who has a package from a Chantara seamstress. At the archives, Violet finally tells her friends the truth about Xaden, just as Ridoc urged. Violet has a nightmare about the sage. She sees Drius burning behind her as he tells her to come to him. When she refuses, he lifts the sword of Tyrandor and moves to strike her, at which point she wakes. Violet opens the package from Chantara and finds a nightgown and robe made from the fabric she had admired in Deverelli. Xaden had sent it back to Basgiath ahead of their return. Hoping to pull him out of his brooding, she decides to write to him, him, just as he once wrote to her. In class, they begin training on battle dismounts and quick remounts. Violet and Tern manage to do it, though they have to adjust their technique from the others. After class, Violet speaks with Xaden and gives him a letter along with a black wrist cuff as a birthday gift. Felix arrives with news from Aricia. 2 Wyvern managed to break through the wards before eventually dying, though they got further than the last who attempted. This confirms that the wards are weakening. Felix has come to help train Violet. 3 weeks pass and Xaden is called to Tyrrendor. Violet and the others come across Llewellyn and Kaldir arguing about Tyrrendor matters. Xaden arrives and informs the men that he has already made his decision. He plans to open Tyrrendor's borders to take in civilians. Halden arrives and tries to forbid it, but Xaden stands firm, warning that Drius will fall within weeks and vowing to take in any citizens who can make it through the pass to Tyrrendor. Lynx finally receives his signet. He is a shadow wielder. Xaden notes to Violet that magic has chosen a replacement for him, sensing he won't be around much longer. Xaden announces that he is leaving. He has resigned from his position as a teacher. Violet begs him to stay or at least meet her in Aricia, but he refuses and leaves. Sawyer asks Violet to come with him while he attempts to mount his dragon, Slisiag, using his new prosthetic leg. At first he struggles and argues with her about adjusting their method to accommodate him. Eventually he gives in and accepts Slisiag's help. When their friends see him riding again, they all cheer in celebration. The squad then flies to Aricia, where they are set to spend a week. Upon arrival, Brennan seeks out Violet and reveals that he knows Xaden is Venin. He admits that he has already tried to heal him but failed. However, Brennan also shares that Xaden hasn't given up hope on seeking a cure, which relieves Violet. Xaden returns one night, knocks on Violet's bedroom door and kisses her. He reveals that he has not channeled for 73 days. When she asks how long he needs to go before he trusts himself with her, he admits that he had set the goal at 76 days, which is twice the length of Barlow's longest strength without draining after his first channeling. However, he came back early because he realized that he hadn't channeled even when he was beyond the wards, suggesting that he should be able to control himself around her. Violet and Xaden get intimate together, and Xaden doesn't lose control. Violet has the same nightmare again. The sage tells her he is tired of waiting and that he will kill her if she does not come to him. She wakes to find Xaden caught in a nightmare. She wakes him and describes her dream, explaining that she was on a battlefield in Drius, watching it burn while the sage held her by the throat. However, this time was different. When she looked down to channel from the earth, she saw his hands instead of hers. Xaden realizes that it was not her dream, rather she was inside his. They realize the second signet Violet got from Andarna, that is dream walking. In the nightmare, the sage was speaking to Xaden about Violet, demanding that he bring her to him. They realize that this is not the first time she has unknowingly entered someone else's dreams. She recalls an instance in Samara when she may have entered Marin's dream as well. She was trying to save a burning family portrait as Kat tried to drag her to safety. They seek out Marin and Violet asks if she has a portrait of her family. Marin goes into her room and emerges with a painting identical to the painting Violet dreamed about in Samara. Marin admits that losing the painting used to be her worst nightmare. Now Violet and Xaden understand that Violet has the ability to wander into anyone's mind while they sleep, their minds completely unshielded. The dragons and griffins warn their riders and flyers that a wyvern horde is approaching from the east. Aricia is under attack. Violet commands Andarna to guard the wardstone and tasks herself with guarding the wall. Rhiannon argues that their second and third year riders should all guard the gates. The third years go to the east gate with Dane, and second years go with Rhiannon to the north gate. Just as Violet is about to leave for her designated post, Arik sprints after her. He tells her she must protect Dun's temple. Violet brushes off his warning, insisting she must protect the entire city. She insists Dun's temple attendants can protect themselves before rushing off. Arik says that the temple is how she saves Tyrrendor. Violet and Rhiannon pair up and take their dragons to the sky to fight Wyvern, where they confront Theophany. Rhiannon and her dragon chase after Theophany, while Violet and Tern retreat to the ground after Tern sustains a minor injury. They land near Dun's temple, where Violet is shocked to see Andarna, who is supposed to be guarding the wardstone. Andarna insists she's following the prince's orders, as Arik told Violet to protect Dun's temple. A wingspur has broken off in Tern's leg, which Violet can't remove. Rhiannon doubles back, sees the injury, and uses her ability of transporting objects to pull the wingspur out of Tern. Theophany arrives at the temple, and the priestess there calls her a heretic. Violet pieces together that Theophany was once a priestess of Dun herself. Suddenly, Theophany sees something behind them at the temple that terrifies her and her Venin companions into leaving. One of the Venin vanishes in the same way Garrick can. A wyvern crashes from the sky and slams into one of the temple's temple's pillars, shattering it. Zahilna appears and uses his powers to slow the falling debris, preventing it from injuring Violet. The wards are now fully functional and holding because Leithin, the Irid, has arrived and activated them. Leithin has helped them for Andarna's sake, but what he's seen of Violet confirms his fears. When he criticizes Andarna's behavior as unlike the Irids, Violet defends her bravery. Leithin from Andarna's den, and considering her family, agrees to let Violet stay while they talk, but no one else can listen. He insists Andarna deserves the chance to learn their ways and offers to teach her if she returns home for a few years. Though Andarna doesn't want to leave Violet, Leithin explains that Irids are magic and that she has the ability to break their bond. He promises Violet will survive with her bond to Tern and that Andarna can reforge their bond if she chooses to return. When Leithin asks for Violet's advice, she heartbreakingly tells Andarna to choose what makes her feel happy and safe. With her blessing, Andarna breaks the bond and flies off. Violet collapses from the pain, caught by Rhiannon and then Xaden. She tells them Andarna is gone. The chapter opens with an epigraph: no rider has ever survived losing their dragon. Violet grieves in bed for 3 days until Mira's return forces her up. Brennan and Xaden join them in her room. After bathing, Violet overhears Mira and Brennan arguing about their grandmother, Niara. Mira read their mother's journals and realized she left out the months she and Brennan were left with Niara while their parents took Violet somewhere. When they returned, Niara cut off contact. Mira believes Violet was taken to Dun's temple to be dedicated. There, the priestess told their parents Violet had multiple paths, one dark. They refused the dedication. Mira has searched for temple records under Sorengale but found nothing. She stops when she realizes Violet has overheard. Pieces fall into place for Violet. She remembers how surprised Dun's people were to see dragons. Her mother didn't take her, but their father did. When Brennan asks what the priestess said, Mira recalls the heart that beat for Violet would do the wrong thing for the right reason and turn dark. While Mira believes the priestess meant Violet, Xaden reveals it was about him. He's beginning to turn venin. Basically, the process of dedication is something which is done for weak or disabled kids. When they are sent for dedication to a particular god, the god protects them. In Violet's case, she was fragile when she was a kid, and her dad tried to dedicate her to Goddess of War, Dun, to make her strong. But she was never fully dedicated, as they expected multiple future for her and was only partially done. Violet slowly starts recovering from Andarna's loss. She struggles with runes now that she no longer has access to Andarna's magic. She must use abrasive strands of Terns instead. However, with the instruction of her classmate and Imogen's best friend Quinn, Violet is able to create a satisfactory rune in class. Later, Violet overhears Bodhi and Xaden arguing because Bodhi wants to drop out and join the fight. However, Xaden insists that Bodhi stay and graduate. He needs him to be safe so that he can take over the rule of Tyrrendor if Xaden turns fully Vanin. Bodhi is the only immediate family of Xaden. Violet finds herself in Xaden's dream again. When she realizes what's happening and calls to him, something shifts. She is no longer just seeing through his eyes, but is now able to walk through the dream herself. The sage tells Xaden that if Violet does not come to him, a mysterious she will die. Violet does not know who he is referring to. Violet wakes herself in Xaden just as Garrick arrives at their bedroom door, bloodied and beaten. He reveals that Theophany attacked his patrol but left him alive to deliver a message. The Venin have reached Drius and are demanding that Bodhi and Violet be delivered to them within 5 hours, or she will die. When Violet notices the dragon scale Garrick is holding, she finally understands who she is. The scale belongs to Tain, Mira's dragon. The Vanin have taken Mira. Violet and her peers debate their next move. Xaden notes they lack enough riders to save Mira, defend Drius, and protect the pass. Brennan insists they must prioritize. Though Violet hates leaving people behind, Brennan reminds her leadership means making hard choices. Professor Trissa says General Melgren won't send reinforcements. His signet showed the battle ending in defeat. Violet argues he only saw one possible outcome, one without 3 rebellion relics. They conclude that if more marked ones go with them, they can change the path Melgren foresaw. Garrick shares that Theophany demanded Xaden bring Violet and his brother. While others assume she means Bodhi, Xaden realizes she's referring to Jack Barlow, who turned Venin like him. The two were transformed by the same sage, making them Venin brothers. Brennan pushes Violet to make a decision, warning that trying to save everyone will lead to failure. Violet chooses to focus on killing Theophany. Violet, Brennan, and Xaden arrive at Drius and see the overwhelming number of Wyvern and Venin forces approaching. fighting. Tairn communicates with Violet. Arik was spotted flying on Mulvik away from the conflict. When they arrive at a northern field where Theophany is, Violet sees Tairn chained to the ground and surrounded by wyverns. Theophany holds a knife to Mira's throat. Garrick arrives with Jack in a large chest, expecting to trade him for Mira's life, but Theophany slits Mira's throat. While Violet is distracted diving for Mira and clutching at her open throat, Theophany throws a dagger at Jack, attempting to kill him, then flees. Brennan races to Violet and Mira's side and begins trying to heal her, but he doesn't have enough power. Dane and Sloane arrive. Violet begs Sloane to help siphon power from Dane and into Brennan using her signet power. This gives Brennan the power he needs to heal Mira's wound, though it leaves a thick pink scar around her neck. Sloane hands Violet a letter addressed from Arik. Violet briefly wonders why Arik sent Sloane into a war zone to deliver his mail to her. She slips the package into her jacket pocket. Dane, Sloane, Brennan, and Xaden depart to carry out their roles in the battle plan, leaving Violet behind with Bodhi and his dragon, Queer. While Brennan flies Mira to safety, Violet sends Tairn to carry Mira's dragon, Teen, to safety as well. Garrick is sent to return Jack Barlow to his cell, as it is now clear he has information that Theophany and Berwyn don't want Navarre to know. Just so that you know, Berwyn is the sage who turned Jack as well as Xaden. In second novel, we thought Xaden killed the sage who converted him, but it looks like Berwyn is still alive. While Tairn is out of range, Theophany returns. When a sudden storm comes on without lightning, Violet realizes her mistake. Theophany is not a lightning wielder like her, but a storm wielder like her mother. Bodhi wants to stay and fight with Violet, but she prioritizes his life and urges him to leave. His dragon Quer agrees and grabs Bodhi by force, flying them away from Theophany and Violet. Violet battles Theophany, but she is outmatched. Theophany attempts to convince Violet to channel, but Violet refuses, knowing that even if she fails, her friends are more than capable of succeeding without her. Theophany wants to recruit Violet and be her teacher. The narrative switches to Rhiannon's point of view as she's stationed with Redok in the Madaro Pass, assisting the civilians attempting to flee through it while simultaneously fighting off Wyvern. Rhiannon witnesses Redok freezing a Wyvern from the inside out, a stronger manifestation of his signet that allows him to control ice, which he had been trying before on fruits. Meanwhile, Theophany has Violet in her grip, but Violet headbutts her, breaking free. To avoid being drained when Theophany channels from the ground, Violet climbs onto the dead body of a wyvern. Sgail arrives, grabbing Violet and carrying her to Tairn. Meanwhile, the battle rages on with countless wyvern attacking. Violet uses her lightning to take them down several at a time. Arik, who was seen leaving the battlefield prior, returns with 1,000 Zahilna soldiers and their horses. If you recall, they had promised to fight against Venins when they all had visited the Isle. Tairn and Violet refocus on their one objective and fly for Theophany in the distance. The narrative now briefly switches to Imogen. She is fighting against Wyvern, attempting to rip Bodhi and his dragon apart. Imogen notices two Venin approaching the tower where her best friend Quinn is stationed. Imogen dismounts her dragon and rushes to protect Quinn, but is intercepted by Dane. A nearby Venin blasts fire at them and Imogen and Dane duck behind his shield. Imogen somehow turns it to stone, suggesting she might have awoken a second signet or might have had a hidden second signet like every other relic person. Imogen reaches Quinn and helps kill the Venin she's fighting, but Quinn has been fatally stabbed in the chest. With her last words, Quinn urges Imogen to confess her feelings to Garrick before it's too late. She dies in Imogen's arms. Garrick appears and teleports himself and Imogen away using his Walker signet, though he is dangerously close to burnout due to multiple distance walking. On the other hand, Violet tries and fails to strike Theophany's wyvern with lightning. A distant pained roar notifies Tairn and Violet that Xaden and Sgail are in trouble. While they're distracted, a net is thrown over her and Tairn from above, sending them plummeting to the ground. Using a rune, she is able to loosen the net enough for Tairn to start freeing himself. Arik's package has come undone. Inside is a roll of parchment and a ceremonial-looking dagger made of grey marble. A note from Arik tells Violet to strike in the dark. Theophany approaches and Violet tucks the dagger out of sight. Theophany reveals that Sgail has been captured using another net. Violet attempts to attack Theophany, but Theophany is too fast. To make her hesitate, Violet asks if she misses Unbril. She had figured out that Theophany was a priestess before, hence the silver in her hair too. Theophany asks if Violet knows the pain pain of not being allowed to return, knowing that it would sever the very thing that's kept her untouchable all these years. A massive wave of shadows rushes toward them, and Violet realizes it is Xaden channeling from the earth. Violet remembers Arik's note and suddenly realizes something. Arik has manifested his signet too. He is a precog, that is. Arik saw the future and handed her a weapon made from a fractured temple that Theophany apparently couldn't step inside. When the darkness falls over them, Violet casts lightning to see, illuminating Theophany, who stumbles right into an invisible wall, which reveals itself to be Andarna. Theophany reaches out a hand to touch Andarna in wonder, but fearful she will drain Andarna's life force, Violet sprints toward her and stabs her in the heart with her blade, killing her. The story now switches to Xaden's point of view. He sees Scale is trapped and injured, pushing him to the brink. He refuses to let the Venin kill her. Berwyn, the sage Xaden thought dead, has survived and turned someone else, Xaden's new brother. Xaden feels betrayed, especially after months of resisting the same path. In this novel, it's not told who else has turned Venin. We can discuss spoilers and theories at the end of the novel. Anyway, Xaden loathes Panchek, who was the mole in Navarre who sold them out for power, believing Berwyn won't harm him as he's the key to reaching his son. So one more hidden detail which says Berwyn has a son, and he is among them. Berwyn proves otherwise, killing a dragon instantly with a dagger, something Xaden thought impossible. When Berwyn nears Skyle, Xaden channels directly from the ground, killing Venin and Wyvern alike, but their bond prevents him from killing Berwyn as he can't harm him because he created or guided him. As he battles, he holds onto his love for Violet, fearing it'll be the next part of himself he loses. Skyle eventually escapes and questions if there's anything left of him. He lets her see for herself. Shocked, she promises to ask Tern for permission, knowing Violet's decision will seal their fate. The last chapter is back on Violet's perspective. Violet suddenly finds herself outside Rierson House feeling disoriented. Brennan rushes outside frantic and asks where she has been. She has been missing for 12 hours. Someone gives Brennan a report stating that 4 riders and their dragons, along with 3 elders, have been murdered. 4 riders are still missing, Garrick among them. They believe Xaden is responsible. Additionally, 6 dragon eggs are missing. Violet is unsure of what has happened. She notices an emerald ring on her wedding finger, the same stone used in the blade of Aricia, and a note in her pocket from the head priestess of Dun, blessing her legal marriage to Xaden. Another note from Xaden tells her not to look for him and that it is hers now. Though the note might imply Tyrandor, of which she's now the Duchess, it might be referring to something else, though Violet remembers nothing. Violet realizes that Imogen has wiped her memories of the last 12 hours, including her wedding to Xaden. When she confronts Imogen, Imogen confirms that she only did what Violet asked her to do. Not only that, some dragon eggs were missing, and Xaden and some other riders, including Garrick, were missing too. Some riders were dead, but again we don't know who. They have declared Xaden as traitor, as he, being Venin, is now known to everyone. The novel ends here. This novel ends with many major cliffhangers, and there are so many unanswered questions. Unfortunately, we don't have a new novel released yet, and it might take some more time for the same. We realize a few crucial things here. Andarna returned to save Violet once again. Has she returned permanently, or was it just to save her? In the last chapter, when Violet wakes up from sleep losing memories, Andarna communicates to her saying, "I will not let them burn you." Now it means 2 things. 1, Andarna is still able to communicate to her. 2nd, a rider is burnt only when rider commits high treason. In this case, maybe they suspect her to be involved with Xaden and the missing riders and eggs, or something more. Xaden witnessed someone close to him turn Venin. Who would that be? Bodhi or Garrick or Violet's brother Brennan? Violet married Xaden when she was conscious in spite of him now turning to full Venin. After that, they all did something, and Violet has purposefully asked Imogen to clear her memories, which poses more question on what is she keeping secrets about. Also, we have a lot of mythological gods mentioned here in this series, which might play a major role, as some of the characters represent and have some special connection towards certain gods. For anything, let me know your theories in comment section, so that everyone can enjoy or discuss the same. That's all for today, and I will see you all in the next episode. Until then, watch and share my videos, and subscribe our channel for more interesting novels discussion.